I recently enrolled my son in a new after-school program called The Glass House. It was marketed as a hybrid between tutoring and structured play, with an emphasis on creative freedom in a monitored environment. I didn't like the idea at first. I work long hours, and leaving him with strangers made my stomach churn. But I was out of options. My son, Milo, had been struggling. Not academically, he was sharp, but emotionally. Quiet, withdrawn. Ever since my divorce, he rarely spoke unless prompted. He missed his mom. I thought maybe being around other kids might pull him back out. The Glass House was tucked behind a strip mall. Oddly enough, the entrance wasn't much to look at, just a glass door with frosted lettering. But the interior was another story. It was spotless, too spotless. Gleaming white floors, sterile white walls, soft white lights. It didn't feel like a daycare or a tutoring center. It felt like a clinic. The woman who ran it introduced herself as Ms. Voss. Mid-30s, tall, serious. She wore a uniform, black slacks, a silver-gray blouse, and spoke with the calm, clipped tone of someone used to control. She explained that the children spent time in individual learning pods, played as a group under supervision, and rotated through quiet, structured, independent enrichment. But what sold me, honestly, were the observation feeds. Each parent, she explained, was given a secure login to watch their child in real time. Each pod had a ceiling-mounted camera, as did the playroom, nap area, and hallway. Transparency, she said. We believe in it. I believed in it too. For the first few days, I watched Milo obsessively. His pod looked like a cross between a Montessori desk and a therapy room, plush floor mat, mini desk, art supplies, manipulatives, screens with educational games. And Milo seemed fine. He worked. He played. He even smiled once or twice. He'd formed a fast friendship with a boy named Arlo, skinny, talkative, a year older. They always sat beside each other during group time. Arlo made him laugh. I watched during lunch. I watched during enrichment. I even watched late at night, logging in just to see the pod dimmed and empty, lit only by the soft blue glow of an exit sign. But something didn't sit right. The first odd thing I noticed was the drawing. Milo isn't much of an artist, but one evening when I picked him up, he shoved a page into my hand and ran ahead of me. It was a crayon sketch of a tree, simple brown trunk, green top, but beneath it was a figure, a crooked figure, long arms, thin legs, no face, just empty white space where a face should have been. "Who's this?" I asked. "That's the Watcher," he said without stopping. "He stands behind the glass." "Behind the glass?" I asked him again in the car, but he'd already changed the subject. Something about Arlo making a tower from glue, sticks, and tissues. I let it go, until I saw him on the camera. It was a Wednesday, mid-afternoon. I was in a meeting and had the feed open in a browser tab, muted, just keeping an eye on him. At one point, Milo stood up from his activity, walked to the pod wall, which was clear glass, floor to ceiling, and stared straight into the camera. Not at the screen, not out into the hallway, right into the lens. And waved. At first, I thought maybe it was for me. Maybe he figured out I was watching. But then I saw something else. Movement. A flicker of shape. behind the glass of the adjacent pod. There wasn't supposed to be anyone there. The schedule said the neighboring pod was unoccupied for cleaning, but for a split second, no more than a frame or two, I saw a figure move, just beyond the glass. It wasn't staff, and it didn't move like a person. It drifted, or glided. I rewound the footage, and it was gone. Not just the figure, the entire segment. It skipped backward as if that moment never recorded. I tried to call Ms. Voss. No answer. I tried again later. Still nothing. That night, I asked Milo directly, "Is there someone else there, behind the glass?" He looked confused. "No, that's the Watcher. He's not a person." I felt a chill crawl up my neck. "What does he do?" Milo shrugged. "Just watches. But sometimes he whispers." I pressed. "What does he whisper?" He looked away. "I'm not supposed to tell." That night I didn't sleep. The next morning I drove to the glass house early. Too early. They weren't open yet. The lights inside were off, the place quiet. I sat in the car watching for motion. At 6:47 a.m., a light flicked on inside. Hallway cam. I pulled up the parent feed on my phone. It let me in. All the pods were empty, all but one. Pod Stvertaho, Milo's pod. I tapped in, and I saw him, standing there, not moving, not sitting, not fidgeting, just standing, eyes forward. The timestamp said 6:48 a.m., but Milo was in the back seat of my car, dozing. I refreshed the page. Still standing. Same pose, same expression. I opened the hallway cam. No staff had entered. There was no way he could be in there. I took a screenshot, closed the app, waited until opening. When I went in, Milo was cheerful, ran ahead, hugged Arlo, like nothing was wrong. I showed the image to Ms. Voss. She stared at it for a long time. Finally, she said, "That's not the live feed. That's backup footage. Sometimes the server glitches and replays buffered frames. I'll file a ticket with IT." She smiled politely, but her hands were shaking. That was 2 weeks ago. I kept watching, and the more I watched, the more I noticed the loops, the repetition, the way Milo always laughed at the same moment during Arlo's story, the way the girl in Pod 3 always dropped her pencil exactly 5 minutes into every session, the way Ms. Voss walked by with the same clipboard, paused at the same point, looked in, smiled, moved on. Every feed, on a loop, not a glitch, a performance. I stopped watching. I pulled Milo out last Monday, but he changed. He's quieter now, draws more pictures. The Watcher appears in every one. And yesterday he said something that made me freeze. He whispered it while I tucked him into bed. "Daddy," he said, "the Watcher misses me." This happened around 2 years ago, and even though the guy was eventually caught, the memory still puts my nerves on edge. I'm 12 now, but this happened when I was 10. My best friend, let's call him Nate, was 11 at the time. We were the kind of kids who spent every spare minute together, inventing our own missions, battling invisible enemies, and building pillow forts like they were military outposts. The morning it started, I was sitting on the floor eating cereal in front of the TV when a news report flashed on. A man had escaped police custody at a local hospital. He was considered armed and dangerous and last seen in our area. My first instinct wasn't fear, it was excitement. This was the kind of thing Nate and I had trained for, in theory anyway. By the time Nate showed up that afternoon, I already had our HQ set up. I'd moved every Nerf gun we owned, about 10 between us, into my bedroom. Ammo was everywhere. We posted walkie-talkies around the house, even though they only worked from a few feet away. It felt like real-life Call of Duty, and for 2 kids, that was better than any video game. For hours, we were stationed by the upstairs window, peeking through the blinds like tiny soldiers waiting for the enemy to strike. We had a whole code book of signals. Double blink for backup, 3 taps on the window means intruder, and so on. Around 5:30, my mom came home from work. She laughed when she saw the living room transformed into a battlefield of foam darts and overturned couch cushions. That night, she and my stepdad were going out to dinner, and Nate was staying over. Perfect. A full night of patrol. As soon as they left, we held a council meeting in my room. Nate suggested we call in our neighbor, Jake, an older kid who had joined our operations before. Jake was 13 and way cooler than we were, so we figured he'd be game. We marched to his house, knocked 7 times on the door, our signature knock, and waited. Jake's mom answered and told us Jake couldn't come out, grounded for sneaking out the night before. We left, defeated but not deterred. On the walk back, I went to text my mom to ask what time they'd be home, but my phone wasn't in my pocket. Not on the table, not in the couch cushions. Nate and I tore the place up looking for it. We figured maybe I left it upstairs, so we ran back up. I told Nate to text my number so we could hear the ding. He did. No sound. But then his message showed up as read. 7:51 p.m. We just stared at each other. I hadn't used my phone in hours, and Nate had seen me leave it on the kitchen table when we were suiting up for patrol. No one else should have read that message. We tried to laugh it off. Probably a glitch, Nate said, sending another one. You there? Read. 7:53 p.m. Now we were spooked. I made Nate check his pockets. Then I checked mine again. Nothing. Nate was suddenly serious. Dude, is your Wi-Fi open? That freaked me out more. I didn't even know how to check that. Nate pulled out his own phone and showed me. My home network was password protected. No way anyone outside could be using it. He sent another text. Seriously, who is this? Read. 8:01 p.m. That's when we both heard something. A tiny creak. From above us. Our eyes shot to the ceiling. My house had one of those pull-down attic ladders in the hallway outside my bedroom. It was still pushed up, but we swore we heard movement. We stood completely still for what felt like forever. I think it came from up there, I whispered. Could have been the house settling, Nate replied, but he didn't sound sure. I decided to go downstairs and call my mom from the landline. I hadn't used it in years, but I remembered how. The dial tone sounded weird, like someone had just hung up. That's when Nate screamed from upstairs. I bolted back up. He was standing by my closet, eyes wide. Dude, your phone. It just lit up in there. We stood frozen. Then we both sprinted downstairs and locked ourselves in the laundry room. I called 911 from the landline, Told them we thought someone was in the attic or maybe hiding in my room. The dispatcher stayed calm and told us to stay put. When the officer arrived, we practically tackled him on the porch. He went in alone, flashlight drawn. 10 minutes later, he came out and told us what he found. The attic had been opened. The ladder was still up, but the hatch had fingerprints on it. My closet door was ajar and my phone was lying inside, on top of a pair of jeans I hadn't worn in weeks. Even worse, there was an empty backpack and a roll of duct tape next to it. They never found the guy in the house, but a neighbor's security camera caught someone sprinting through the backyard about a minute before the cop arrived. It matched the description of the escapee on the news. The police told my parents that he probably got in through the back window while we were outside at Jake's house. He might have heard us talking about patrols and hideouts and thought we were playing. But he must have realized we were onto him once the phone messages started coming in. After that night, my parents put in an alarm system and cameras. Nate didn't sleep over again for months. Things are normal now. Sort of. But sometimes when the house is too quiet or I hear a noise above me, I still look at the attic door and wonder, what if we hadn't gone to Jake's house? What if we'd just fallen asleep? Or what if Nate hadn't thought to text my phone? My father told me a story once, out by the fire pit behind our cabin, on the edge of the New Mexico desert. It was the kind of night you don't forget. Dead quiet except for the wind brushing over dry grass, the stars like nails punched into the purple-black sky. The moon was full, swollen, hanging low enough you'd swear you could throw a rock at it. The fire cast a hard light on his face, showing every crease, every sun-worn line. He took a long sip from his bottle, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and started talking. "This was a long time ago," he said, his voice rough as gravel. "Back when I was maybe your age, maybe younger. We lived outside a Navajo reservation in a busted-up shack my dad built himself. Wasn't much, but it was ours. Land stretched far and dry in every direction. Nothing but brush, broken fences, and sun-baked silence." He paused, leaned forward to feed the fire, and watched the flames jump. "One night, my mom got sick. Real sick. Fever so bad she was shaking like a leaf in a dust storm. My dad loaded her into the truck and told me to come with. We needed medicine. Closest town was 60 miles over dirt and rock, through country not fit for man or animal. "What time was it?" I asked. "Late, real late, close to midnight. No stars that night. Moon was hiding. Road was just a memory of a road, twisted through the hills. We had this old Chevy, rusted to hell, suspension shot to shit. But she still ran. Or, well, mostly." He took another drink. The wind howled low and long like it was listening. We got maybe halfway when the engine coughed. Loud. Then started sputtering like it couldn't catch its breath. My dad cursed, pulled to the side, and popped the hood. Told me to stay in the truck. I remember the way my father's eyes looked just then. They weren't focused on me. They were somewhere else, far back, haunted. I rolled the window down. Desert air hit me, dry but cooler than inside. I remember leaning out to try and see what Dad was doing. Then I smelled it. He paused, let it hang there. Sulfur, rotten eggs, And worse, something like dead meat. Not just old, but bloated, putrid. Like something had been left out too long in the sun, then pissed on by the devil. I gagged. I still remember that smell. I've smelled burning bodies. This was worse. I shivered, even though the fire was warm. Then my skin prickled. You ever feel like something's watching you? Like something is looking at you from behind a tree or a corner, and if you just turned fast enough, you'd see it? That's what it felt like. My neck itched. My arms broke out in goosebumps. I looked out the windshield, and I saw it. He sat back then, silent for a full minute. "What was it?" I asked, almost whispering. He stared into the flames. It was a shadow at first, long, wrong, like someone wearing the body of a man too big for them, bent over but still tall. It crossed in front of the headlights, fast, too fast, and it didn't walk. It loped like a wolf trying to remember how to stand upright. I didn't speak, neither did he. The wind blew again, colder this time. It had legs like a deer, long, jointed backwards, hooves, I think. The torso was humanish but stretched, covered in muscle, gray skin like dried-out leather. The head, he paused again. Coyote, maybe, but twisted. Longer, eyes set too far apart, teeth like broken glass. It turned and looked right at me. His voice cracked for the first time, and it smiled. My stomach dropped. I ducked, couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so bad I nearly pissed myself. I tried to call out to my dad, but nothing came out. Then I heard the door open. He mimed it, slow and heavy, creaking open. I flinched, raised my fists, and there was my dad. Or, at least, something wearing his shape. I was holding my breath. He climbed in, real slow. Moved like something wasn't quite right. Smelled wrong, too. Like burnt hair and wet pennies. He looked at me and said, "Let's go, son. We need to get that medicine for your mother." That's when I realized something. He looked at me dead on. My dad never called her your mother. Always said mama. Never once did he say it any other way. So I just stared, and out the corner of my eye, I saw it. My breath hitched. The real one, running alongside the truck. That thing, the beast, just keeping pace. Yellow eyes locked on me, grinning that same awful grin. It wasn't my dad in the seat, it was something else. But then it just looked ahead, like it didn't care, like it had already done what it came to do. He shook his head. I don't remember the rest of the drive, just woke up in the hospital later. Mom was fine. They said Dad brought me in unconscious. But I never asked him about it. Not once. But how did you know that it wasn't him in the truck? My father looked back at the fire. Because the real one never came in. He stayed outside. I think maybe he never came back from checking the engine. The fire cracked. Neither of us spoke for a long time. "Was it a skinwalker?" I finally asked. He nodded slowly. "They go by many names. Skinwalker, Yi Naldlushi, Dustwalkers. They wear the skin of what they kill, but they can't hold it long. The soul fights back, so they trick you. Talk like your loved ones, move like 'em, but they're hollow." I swallowed. "What do they want?" He stared past the flames. "To watch, to play. to remind you the desert doesn't belong to men. Not really.